know that not everyone is willing to step out and take that initiative of leadership and to do it with love and compassion. So with that, I'd really love to turn it over to you and hear what the awakening world is for you.
Oh, wow. First of all, thank you for having me, both of you. As you were speaking, what came to mind was that awakening is sensitization. Awakening is sensitization. I don't actually think we're all that different. I don't think we have cultural differences as vast as we perceive. I think that our origins all come from our relationships with the planet, come with our relationships with the universe, with the world around us. How our cultures developed was based on that. You know, what was the food we ate? What was our relationship with the planets and the stars? What was our relationship with the climate and the other elements of environment around us? What was our relationship with our bodies? How did we express in order to further our survival? And how did we come together and collaborate with others in our location? So I don't think we're as different as perceived. I think that a lot of, when you describe not knowing or not having experienced things that perhaps I experienced, the separation is in the senses. It's literally in not having heard, not having seen, not having experienced it yourself. I don't think that makes us different. I think that, in fact, in European cultures, this idea of imperialism, feudalism, hegemony existed there before colonization spread around the world. We've talked about this before, how in European cultures throughout history, there was a lower class and a royal or affluent class. And the lower class were magnetized to a kingdom in order to support and protect and serve the royals and the affluent. And as those populations grew, it became more and more difficult to control. But there were always connections with nature. There were always connections with the earth. There was always plant medicine and spirituality. In fact, sciences come from spirituality. All sciences started out as alchemy and stargazing. So if we think about it that way, awakening to me means to allow oneself to be sensitized, allowing oneself to feel, because what's happening to me is happening to you. And the illusion that it is not is a problem for both of us. And in most cases, you and I are not creating it, Katrina. We may perpetuate it in the same ways as the common folk 500 years ago in Europe perpetuated by serving, by agreeing to serve and not revolting against the royals or the church or whoever was oppressing the European people, until the European people began to leave those areas, those places. But because that's all that was known, of course, it was perpetuated in other places. So this is what we're dealing with. We are not as different as you think.
I'm so appreciating both of you a lot. And one of the things that is kind of cool, you talked about spirituality and science. And there's a really fascinating thing that Deepak Chopra points out when he was on our show. He pointed out that about the most ancient spiritual text that has survived, that's not sitting in the basement of the Vatican somewhere, are the Vedic Scriptures,
Mm.
written about 7,000 years ago. And in the Vedic Scriptures, God, which is called Brahman, is assigned 26 principles.
Mm.
Fast forward 7,000 years to today, and our most modern science is quantum physics.
Mm-hmm.
And in quantum physics, our scientists have scientifically proven that we all live in a unified field of ever-changing molecules. And guess what? There are, from a scientific standpoint, 26 principles of the unified field that perfectly correlate with the 26 principles of Brahman, written 7,000 years ago.
Oh,
Which
absolutely.
means, isn't that cool? Which means that we're
Mhm.
living in a time in which our most ancient spiritual wisdom and our most modern science are saying the exact same thing, just
Yes.
from their
And
perspective.
it actually goes back even further. And there was a time in European history where those peoples were considered heretic. And that had nothing to do with truth. It had to do with wanting to control and manage large groups of workers. Sometimes I'm going to refer to the masses as worker bees, because that is often the perspective of the those in power, that any concerns about the worker bees revolves around the ability to exploit them, their capacity for being exploited. And so all of the confusion, all of the misinformation, all of the miseducation that is designed for us to consume, even the unhealthy foods, all of that, the high amounts of sugar and sodium in everything, the mass production of plant foods and animal products changes the very nature of our relationship with our own existence, because we don't know even where the food came from. Unless you're willing to go and find a farmer's market and meet the farmer and ask him questions or her questions, you don't know where your food comes from. You don't know if it's been genetically modified or if it's been soaked in insecticides. Throughout every area of human activity, we have been misinformed and manipulated so that we will stay in the worker bee position.
I am so loving what you're saying about the challenge of this domination structure that has been around. I mean, from what I can tell from the dawn of human presence on the planet. And I just find myself really appreciating what you're saying, Reverend Brig, about how there's so much more ways in which we're the same than the things that would have us be different or separate. It's just different experiences. They come from different backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, if we were not the same, these socially engineered structures and systems would not work.
Yes.
We would not, it would not be so easy to make it possible for white people to not know what's going on with Black people. And then when Black people say what's going on with them, it's very difficult to believe because it's so outside of your reality. I mean, this in America starts with redlining and making it so that, you know, people of color cannot purchase property in communities that are predominantly white. And this still exists to this day. In
Hmm.
fact, a friend of mine up north, you may have even read about this story. Her and her husband were selling their house. They had spent something like $500,000 in renovations to their home. And so they were expecting the value of the home to increase dramatically. And they put the house up for sale and had an assessor, an appraiser come in to appraise the value. And it was $500,000 less than what they expected. And then a real estate agent said to them, you have to remove all evidence of your Blackness from your home, because the appraiser is downgrading your appraisal because this is a home owned by Black people, because the perception of that, there's a stigma, there's a perception that if it's owned by Black people, it's not taken care of. Well, this is absolutely not true. It's very racist. and that is in the foundational structure of our society, that these messages are fed to us. They're fed to everyone, not just white people. They're fed to Black people as well, which ends up meaning that a lot of Black people become capitalists or become, they make their life's mission to be about pleasing white people so that they can try and make it the American dream, et cetera, et cetera. Bringing people further and further away from the relationship with the planet, further and further away from the relationship with themselves and their history and their roots and their legacies, their cultures.
I'm really appreciating, again, what you're saying. And one of the things that stands out for me, I've heard people talk about the smog that we're all living in as worker bees. And I'm really appreciating the distinction you have around, there's the worker bees, and then there's those who kind of run the system.
Yes, and they're not all white.
And I'm really curious, what is the awakening
subconsciously world? They are all sort of buying into this Western European idea of aristocracy and common folk, and that the common folk are there to be used and to feed and grow the aristocracy to their own demise.
I'm curious, what is the awakening world given this reality?
The awakening world is choosing consciously of your own free will to feel. You have to choose to feel. It's so pervasive that we avoid sensation, so pervasive that we no longer even know how to work things out in conflict in our families and our marriages and our partnerships and our friendships, because the slightest evidence of conflict we want to avoid. We want to avoid all pain. We've been taught that all pain is bad, but pain is a sensation that our body is designed with. It's a part of our nervous system function. It's there to tell us something.
A couple of things that I'd love to just share. You're right. Pain is something that we avoid from a cultural standpoint, but then also, and this is a big thing that Katrina and I teach a lot about, which is the reptile brain. And when we perceive the possibility of attack, not attack itself, just the possibility, our reptile brain tends to take over. And we go into reaction, and our only options are fight, flight, fear, flight, freeze, and fawn. Right? Now I bring this up because our brain stores memory of pain at 5 to 30 times greater than memory of pleasure,
Absolutely.
so that we can avoid pain.
Yes.
And bring that into the, just if I may, bring it into what you brought up about sensitizing. Okay, if we're going to awaken, we have to become more sensitive, which means we need to be willing to look at the pain of our actions. We have to look at the pain of our relationship to the environment. I mean, my God, isn't it? We've watched this remarkable denial of climate change until, it's like just not deniable anymore, but remarkable denial of the science. And it's still going on, the denial of the science, because it's, as Al Gore said a long time ago, it's a very inconvenient truth. And it's the same with racism. It's very inconvenient and very uncomfortable to look at our racism. So all that being set up, I think we agree an awakening world is becoming more sensitive, allowing ourselves to experience the pain of things that are uncomfortable to look at. As someone who teaches this so beautifully, Bridge, what are some of the tools and practices you recommend for helping us to awaken and allow ourselves to have more sensitivity without going crazy or going into complete denial?
Well, first of all, I want to just remind folks that pain is a reaction. It's a response to something. It's a response to something. Even when you said something about it being an indicator of danger or harm, potential harm. Well, because we have been harmed so much, because we have been attacked so much on every plane of existence, when we feel pleasure, we are afraid. When something good happens, we feel fear. When we are even in the slightest bit uncomfortable, we got to fix it. Instead of actually slowing down, and here's where the practices come in. I think meditation is enormously important. I think that your relationship with yourself is enormously important. If you cannot be honest with you about what your triggers are, what your preferences are, what your aversions are, what your fears and your self-doubts are, then you cannot clearly see anything else, because those things are filters through which you perceive. So in our Heal Thyself course, that's our anti-racism course for white folk, one of the first things we do is we throw down the idea that all white people are racist. Now, when I say that, it means something different from what most white people think. What I mean when I say that is all white people born in Western white supremacist societies live in an environment where it's like swimming in an ocean of racism in every area of human activity. And so I have never met a white person, and I've known a lot of white people, been intimate with my husband's white. I have many white family members. I've lived in white communities. I grew up in private, predominantly white schools. I have known a lot of white people. I've never met one who didn't have any racial bias. And it just so happens that white racial bias has more power than any other racial bias. Because white people are in power in white supremacist societies, it colors every decision that's made in every area of human activity. So meditation first, because when you meditate, you begin to observe yourself. You observe your breath, you observe the tension and relaxation in your body, all of your sensations become more present for you. And then you, when you become more intimate with those observations, then it's less scary to observe the world outside of yourself. When you learn how to, there's a very basic thing I teach in meditation where your mind, when it wanders off and you start thinking about stuff, I tell my students and my clients, don't judge that. This is a practice, it's an exercise. And in an exercise, you repeat things over and over until your body, your mind, whatever it is you're exercising, has adapted to a new pattern. So in meditation, when we observe our breath, there's two things that happen. First of all, we understand that we are not our bodies, that we are an observer of ourselves. We can observe ourselves, which means we can separate from ourselves and look at ourselves, okay? The second thing is that your mind is just doing what minds do. So if you refrain from judging it, then you can very quickly just notice, oh, my mind wandered off. Let me bring it back to my breath. As simple as that. That is integrity. That is integrity, which is the second practice that we teach. To practice integrity means to commit yourself to wholeness. That's what integrity means, everything in its place. Now, committing yourself to wholeness does not mean perfection. It means that when you are out of integrity, first of all, you're very self-aware. You practice self-awareness so that you know as much as possible when that happens, that you will just notice and correct course, just like we do with the mind in the meditation. So life is a meditation. The second piece is that when we don't make excuses, we don't empower that disintegration by giving it reasons and excuses. We simply notice. We notice that it's not of service. We notice it might be doing harm. We notice that it's not aligned with what is true, and we simply correct course. Just like you would with a notification on your car dashboard. You notice that one of your tires is low on air. You simply fix it. You don't lament over it or self-loathe or hate the car or any of those kinds of things. You simply just adjust and set it right. If you're driving down the road and you space out a little bit and you feel yourself go over those little bumps that divide the lanes, you don't go through a whole, you don't deny it or any of those things because you know you're going to run into somebody if you don't correct course. It's no different from that. But because we have an overuse of ego because of having been harmed for generations, we are very dependent on our egos for superficial comfort. And so in many of these conversations, white people come and the first thing on their mind is their comfort. And it feels like fear. It feels like danger. Even though no one's going to kill them, even no one's going to harm them, it feels that way. And until we begin to do practices such as meditation and integrity practice, it's very difficult to discern all of this in yourself. You feel it and then you react to it. Slowing down, getting to know oneself, being consistently in meditation. I meditate every day. I also use practices such as the two practices, well, one practice from the 12-step program called fear inventory. I use that a lot, not because we're putting attention on fear, but the last line of it is to give that fear up to give it up. And so we give it away. We acknowledge that it's there, and then we put it aside and make conscious, sober choices for ourselves, not based on fear. And this may be dangerous even, but we have to make some choices here. Do we want to continue to move in the flow of fear, or do we want to disrupt that? It has to be disrupted. And it's probably going to hurt sometimes. And are we willing to be in that together? Are you willing to get uncomfortable for the sake of my life, for the sake of my 24-year-old son, who every single time he leaves the house, he could easily get pulled over and panic, because sometimes he has anxiety about these things.
So much that you're sharing. And I want to recognize, because most of us are white in this room, most of us are white. And I've had the opportunity to be with you a few times, Bridge. And it's a strong, most of us, when we first hear that all white people, what our brain hears is that we're racist.
You're evil villains.
Right. And we're evil villains. And then because we're all conscious people, it's like, well, no, I'm not racist, because we think racist is Ku Klux Klan or, right, or somebody who's intentionally out to hurt Black people. And of course,
Right.
none of us in this room are. What the greater expansion is the awakening to, by being in this culture, there is a way that we just have lived in our whiteness for so long that we're not aware. And I'll share an example. The murder of George Floyd last year was, for many white people, a wake-up call, because it was so horrific. 9 minutes on top of a man's neck. It's one thing if a cop gets scared and fires a gun, we can kind of rationalize that more easily, but to watch 9 minutes with everybody begging him, get off his neck, it was a cold-blooded murder that most of my white friends were shocked by.
Yeah.
But my Black friends were like, I wasn't shocked. I've grown
Not at
up
all.
with that.
Yeah.
Not at all. And that for me is a good example of, in my white world, it's shocking. But for my friends of color, it's not shocking at all, because they've been living with that kind of consciousness or that kind of experience for so long. Right?
And understand, this is human nature. Listen, who wants to see that? I don't want to see it. I'm tired of looking at it. I am tired of seeing this. Mm-hmm. But if you follow me on social media, you will see me post stories about this every day. Mm-hmm. I don't like it. I don't watch all the videos. I don't read all the articles, but I post the stories every day, because I know a lot of white people are following me, because I'm a Black woman with privilege. I'm a Black woman who grew up with a father who was very much one of those Black people who thought it was important for my survival to know how to break through that barrier with white people. As an adult, I have been fortunate enough to have some economic privilege. I also have a white husband, and I benefit from his white privilege. And all of those things have allowed me some space in which I have chosen to do my work. Mm-hmm. Because I am not inundated 24 hours a day with the explicit racism happening in the world, because I have some privilege. The little bit of privilege I have, I can tell you, I surround myself with other Black colleagues who are illustrious in their degrees and education and deeply spiritual and all that stuff. And they didn't have the cushioning I had. And the reason I surround myself with others is so that what I don't know, I can hear it from someone else. It's like having rear view mirrors on the sides of your car, because you can't see everything on your own. You need that supplement. And so I know I'm privileged. I'm very clear about that. I have cis hetero privilege. As a cis hetero woman who is not gay and identifies as the gender that my parents or the doctors gave me at birth, I have privilege because of that. No one makes a stink about who I love. I can say it out loud. I can walk the street without worrying about being attacked, right? And so when I meet a trans woman or a trans man, it is not natural for me to use the proper pronouns because I'm conditioned in that way, right? So there's all kinds of conditioning, and those conditionings create bias, and we are not aware of all of them. So the most dangerous thing you can do is claim not to have it. It's just not, first of all, it's not necessary to claim that. This is buying into the fairy tale good versus evil thing. And I don't buy that at all. I think we're all flawed. So, it's not necessary to claim to not be racist. Yeah. It in fact makes others, people of color particularly, feel that you're not trustworthy. Right. It's like saying I'm perfect. Somehow I am exempt from the entire world that I live in, where only 5 countries have not been colonized by Europe. Right. It's so highly unlikely.
I want to give Katrina a chance to respond a little bit, and I also want to read some of the comments from our wonderful, wonderful readers or people that are with us. And again, one of the things that I've been imagining for the show is to hear more from you. That's why we're doing it as a Zoom meeting. And as we shift into the Awakening World chapter of Global Peace Tribe, I really want to find that balance of inspiration and information, right? Last night's show, and I think most of you were there, was really inspiring. It was an extremely inspiring show. And today is a little bit more on the informational side, right? But if we really want to wake up, and we must wake up, we as humanity must wake up. We've got to confront these things. I love Bridget's analogy about rear view mirrors. And, 10 years ago, before we had a rear view camera, my van backed into a car and it was a drag. And, now I've got a rear view mirror. That's not going to happen with my camera. And the sensors are going beep, beep, beep. You're about to screw up. Beep, beep.
It's so true. I use mine every day.
Yeah, thank God for that. So I want to read a couple of the comments from everybody, and then I'm going to turn it over to Katrina to hear what's alive for her. Connie writes, Scott, we are waking up. Yes, we are. Absolutely. Ruth writes, conditioning creates bias, and we're not aware of much of it. And that's what causes misperceptions. Absolutely. Also, Connie has provided something really wonderful. She has the Conscious Loving Universe Guidebook. And she writes, the shift from fear to trust involves a shift in core assumptions about the nature of the universe. And in her
100%.
booklet, she offers tools for shifting frequencies to keep up with the earth, which is now moving into higher frequencies. And we are children of the earth. So that's why it's called the Awakening World, because as our world awakens, we, children of the earth, also are awakening. A couple of other comments, then I'll turn over to Katrina and back to Bridge. Jeffrey writes, I need to remember that God has no grandchildren. That's beautiful. Ruth writes, wow, this is a white wake-up call. I'm open to a broader perspective and compassion. Eleanor, Nancy writes, safety and happiness are key to everyone, not any particular group of people, but for everyone. Absolutely. And there we go. I could go
I,
back a little bit further, but I think that
I love
gives
what
me.
Eleanor said there. Yes, and what I'm realizing more and more is that the correction, of course, is for me and to release the need for correcting others around me. Look, unless you're going to take the time and the investment to train to become a teacher on these topics, there are basic ways that you can communicate and you can show up in spaces that you are in that will inspire others. Yes, we are connected. So there is no getting away from your presence having an impact on those around you. That is the biggest way you can make a difference, not by judging harshly. Although I will also say that in a world where we reward people for their service, if someone is doing a disservice, we should not reward disservice, especially if they're not willing to improve. That's a part of integrity. Yeah, so I really appreciated that post.
Dia also writes, wow, I am being unraveled. I've always experienced myself as feeling that all are equal. So I would guess that most of us believe that all of us as beings are equal.
I don't know what that means, though. What does that mean?
Well, for me, what it means is the divinity in all beings. One of the things that I like to teach is that when we have a problem with someone, we actually have a problem with a choice they're making or a behavior.
Yes.
But regardless of, and some of those choices we absolutely cannot and should not condone, and some of those choices and behaviors need to be corrected. But the being is always beautiful. All beings at
I
their
would
core
agree
level,
that all beings are beautiful. Yes.
all beings being that, I mean, pick your political person you don't like. When they were a baby born, they were not an evil baby, right?
I always like to say I could fall in love with something about everyone. I, however, don't believe in equality. I am I'm not a Buddhist, but I am very much in love with the Buddhist definitions of humility and conceit. So the Buddhist definition of conceit is the assertion of superiority, of inferiority, and of equality. Because we are all, we all have, each of us has individual perspective, expression, etc. Some of us are better at one thing than the other. Sometimes that has to do with race or cultural background. Those things are true. But what that means overall is conceit is self-focused comparison. Okay, self-focused comparison. Now, humility is oneness, which is different from equality. If we are one, my hand doesn't have to be my foot.
Right.
In order to be one with my body.
Right.
Each part has its purpose. Each part should be treated with equity. Which I think is a little different from equality, because my foot doesn't need what my hand needs. My foot needs a shoe. My hand does not. Right? My head needs a hat. My hand does not. People who don't have food need food. I have food. So when we get into equality is another way to like blur things, like color blindness kind of thing. We're not all the same, but we're not as different as we think we are. There's plenty for us to connect on.
I like what Omashar just wrote, and I agree with what you're saying about differentiating and that equality can again become an illusion to avoid where there is not equality. So I get that. But Omashar wrote something beautiful. Equality can mean that we are all children of God, equal
Mm-hmm.
in the eyes of the source of all creation.
Mm-hmm.
Omashar, that's beautiful. That's really beautifully stated. Um, um, I
I
want
just
to give
think it's a
Katrina
I
a
think
chance.
it's a focus that takes us into ego. I really do, because we don't know. We don't know that that's what God thinks of us. We don't know, and it's not important. It's an ego concern. What's important is, what am I here to contribute to the whole? What's my job here in this oneness? What can I bring? And if I'm in proximity to others and I have something that they need, then there's the call. If you see something, it is meant for you to have seen it and do something about it.
Yeah. I want to give Katrina a chance to share a little bit. So, Katrina, what comes up for you in this dialogue?
Hmm. Goodness, it's such a rich dialogue. One piece that comes up for me that I do really appreciate is recognizing that the inequities in our world have been here for so long, and that there's a soup that we're all living in as worker bees. That framing is a framing that is more supportive of recognizing, like, wow, we're all struggling, and how can I support you, and how can I have compassion for myself in the midst of the struggle. So it's a framework that just really supports a deeper sense of compassion and the connection, the challenge that it is to be human.
Yeah, I think about what you just said makes me think about a dynamic of slavery, and how when the conversation was about abolishing slavery, white people in the South wanted to secede from the nation. They wanted to leave the Union in order to keep slavery. And that wasn't because they hate Black people. We got to get this right. They were depending on those people. And so this is much more complex than like a fairy tale good guy, bad guy thing. This is really like people being dependent on forced labor from other people, people being dependent on there being an oppressed class, people being dependent on other people's bodies and energies in order to sustain themselves, rather than being independent.
Mm-hmm. It brings more compassion. It doesn't make it right at all, but it does bring more compassion to the challenge of the human experience, and the challenge that we share, which is that how do we create a new system that really honors humanity, and where humanity is honoring the earth systems, where life is held by all of us. So we don't have that, but we're in this transitional time where we're seeing that the systems we have, they're not working, and they're crumbling, they're breaking down, and something new is being born. That is the time that we're in. So
pretty much all of the people who are fighting against that are fighting against it because they sense their dependence on it.
Yes.
Fear of change.
Fear of change.
Going back to that fear versus like doing the fear inventory, and how do we let it go? Some of the practices that I've found have been really helpful in terms of letting it go, as you said, meditation, to go, oh, how does fear feel in my body? Let me experience it as an energy. And that can be deeply transformational, to just notice, like, this is an energy in my body, to be present with it, to feel, how is it in my arms, in my chest, in my legs, outside my body. And as Reverend Bridge said, to breathe and to stay present, to feel, as she also said, is so important. And there's a couple pieces that are really coming to mind to me when I'm considering feelings. For myself, I'm somebody who has had potent emotions.
Mhm.
I'm an artist, so like just big
Me
overwhelming
too.
emotions, yeah, for a long time. And so really the tools of compassionate communication were essential for me to be able to start to ground and center and understand myself in a deeper way. And then, of course, to share that with others. So I created this tool that supports that, where you can go, wow, I'm having a lot of feelings, right? I might be having some feelings that are really joyful, and I might,
Oh, this
certainly
is cool.
with fear, I might be having feelings that are not joyful. And then just sort myself out. What am I feeling right now?
Mm,
And you can somatically notice, right? What's happening right now, and just acknowledging them, just finding words to
that's
express
awesome.
feelings. It helps to calm the nervous system. It helps
See,
you to
folks, this is a
understand
great example. This is a great evidence of the fact that we are not as different as we think we are. In my
yourself.
course, listen, I did not create this course from a background in diversity and inclusion. That's not my background. I'm a metaphysical scientist. I'm a metaphysical parapsychologist. And what I did was I got tired. I got tired of having the conversations with individual people and having them just back and forth. It was so draining. So I decided, let me create a course where all the white people who feel connected to me can come and we can have this conversation. So I created the course. It took me about 3 weeks to create it. And then I invited people to come take the course. And in the process of creating it, I just thought to myself, what are all the things that need to be addressed? What are all the different things? Not just racism is bad. Obviously, racism is not a good thing. So there needed to be a deeper discussion and a deeper exploration. And so one of the things we do is that we have our students share what we call sensation frames. So as they read something, we may ask them at the end of the reading to give a sensation frame about something they felt while they were reading it. They
Absolutely. How do
share,
you feel in your body? What's it
yes,
feeling like?
yes,
What are the emotions? What are the
yes.
needs? What are the values that are
We
coming
actually
up?
have them share an emotion and a body sensation so that
Mhm.
they can begin to understand the connection between the two things.
Yes.
I need to come in for a moment because we're actually almost, I'm going to try and keep it to an hour, but I want to still give a chance to read a few comments. And Reverend Bridge, I want to show your website and also
I
Katrina's.
want those cards.
So yeah, let's go to the cards first because the cards are amazing. I've got my deck right here, as a matter of fact. Um, and so, if people are interested in getting the cards, and you're going to be getting a lot more of Katrina. Katrina and I are going to be teaching a course together in the spring. So, you're going to be seeing more of Katrina on the Awakening World shows. But you can go to lovesmartcards.com. And anything you want to share, Katrina, about when they go here, anything to be aware of? You've got, of course, your video that
I think it's
welcomes
pretty
people.
self-explanatory. I just, there's 4 sets of cards, and it really just helps you to sort yourself out, to be able to put words into what you're feeling in your body and to share that with others. But it also helps you, once you've sorted yourself out, to go, oh, wow, what is it to be in your shoes? And so it really deepens the ability to walk in the shoes of another person, to listen to somebody's story and step into, wow, how would I be feeling if I was living in that experience? And that builds such a deep bridge of connection and understanding. I know and there's times when I have conflict with another person, I can be so much in my own pain that I'm not aware of what's going on over there. And so I've just found this tool to be incredibly powerful in terms of building that bridge of mutual understanding and connection, which is what we need in order to weave ourselves together into the grand tapestry of humanity.
I
And
love that.
again, create create systems that are really going to work for everyone and for life.
I want to
I love it.
acknowledge also that Katrina is a brilliant coach, and I noticed that you also do have, coaching as an option. So if you go to lovesmartcards.com, you can order the cards, or you can also book some coaching. And she does beautiful, beautiful coaching. I've observed it for many, many years. And she spoke of a bridge, and we're going to go to our other bridge,
I have
Reverend
written
Brig.
down the link for those cards. I want those cards.
They're fabulous. They're really fabulous. And Reverend Bridge can be found at the Remember Institute. I love that's what you call it, the Remember Institute. That's the Heal Thyself course that changed the life of my friend Trish, and that's how I met Bridge. And once you go to the Remember Institute, go down to courses, and you've got that ongoing open house, which is great. It's an online way. At any time, anybody can go there and take kind of an online open house course. But you've got some other courses that are going to be coming up in the new year. Tell us about those.
Oh, I'm so excited to tell you all about these courses. Heal Thyself is our most popular course. It's actually called Heal Thyself, a Transformational Initiation for People Racialized as White. It's 6 weeks long. It is not a list of rules for how to behave when you're around people of color. It is an exploration of your own personal bias. It is correction of historical information. It is talking about statistical information, such as on average, every 28 hours, a Black person is killed by police. This is a fact. And lots of history going back almost 20,000 years. And so we have teachers, all of our teachers are people of color, except for one, and she is a person with a disability. We have people who are LGBTQ, people who are Black, people who are Hispanic, women, all ranges of marginalized folk teaching our courses. The Heal Thyself course is our premier course around anti-racism, but our entire curriculum platform is about understanding the ancient philosophy from Egypt that art, science, technology, and spirituality should collaborate. So all of our courses dismantle these structures, all of them. So we have lots of metaphysical work, thought technologies. Coming this week, we have a registration for the Liberated Wordsmith, which is for people who like to write and want to liberate their writing skills. We have the Erotic Engine, which is another personal practice that you can use to get more in tune with your body, as we were speaking about a few moments ago. And we have the Initiate's Path, which is a huge program. It's 3 years long,
Wow.
broken down into 1 year, 3 separate years. And it is, for me, it's such a profound course. We study all different, we do comparative religion in this course. We study A Course in Miracles. We study the Kabbalion, Hermeticism, Chemeticism, Buddhism, Islam, many, many different cultural, spiritual paths are taught in this course. And there is an initiation around Hermeticism so that people can learn things like thought control and manifesting and all that kind of stuff. It's the nuts and bolts of spirituality. So that is, I recommend that for people who want to take a spiritual path where they're going to be working as a priestess or a healer or a teacher in any field of profession.
Beautiful. That's again the Remember Institute. Thank you so much, Bridge. I want to wrap us up just by reading a few of the wonderful comments that have come in. And we didn't go live on Facebook. What I have done is, of course, recorded this and I will create a YouTube link and I'll put that up on my wall. I'll send that to you, Bridge.
Awesome.
And I will send the YouTube link out along with the YouTube from last week's show. We'll send it out to everybody on the Global Peace Tribe list for 30,000 people. But there's some really wonderful comments. Connie writes, yes, Bridge, collaboration of all fields, all races, all cultures, weaving the great tapestry, bringing something to pass on the earth that has never been here before, proceeding on the evolutionary upward spiral to peace on earth. Thank you for that, Connie.
Thank you, Connie.
Charlotte writes, I love the loving and healing approach that you bring to this work. And that's for you, I imagine, Bridge. It really is about sharing and rediscovering our common humanity. Eleanor writes, this discussion is bringing up some tears. Is it tears of resonance? Question mark. Tears of release. Thank you for stirring up the pot.
Bless your
Sage
tears.
writes, great dialogue and words of wisdom shared today. So I really appreciate that all of you have kind of been with us on our first Sacred Sunday of the new year. Just want to kind of tune you into a little bit about what's coming up. This Thursday night, I just a couple days ago agreed to host a program. Of course, Thursday is January 6th, and so it's going to be the 1-year anniversary of a pretty big event that took place in America. And we're not going to go into the politics of that, but Michaela Gaston, who's a wonderful woman, beautiful, extraordinary story. I don't know if you know her story, Bridge. She's a Black woman, and a group of white teenagers intentionally ran her over
Oh
and
my
tried to
goodness.
murder her. She spent years in recovery, and she's become quite an advocate for peace. She's an amazing woman. She's been on my show a few times. Michaela, Gary Malkin, who's a beautiful musical artist, very well known, and several others were doing a gathering for the healing of America with love. And that'll be this Thursday night at 6 p.m. And I'll be posting the link and all of that. You can find it on globalpeacetribe.com starting tomorrow. I'll also post it on my Facebook wall. And that's going to lead into next weekend's Awakening World Series. And the topic is the Weevolution. The Weevolution. Not revolution, but how we all are evolving as we. Louisa Stowe is going to be my co-host for the Friday night show and Saturday night show and Sunday morning show. And we've got some really wonderful guests lined up, like Michaela. So that's what we'll be tackling. And again, we'll be finding that balance of inspirational, wonderful music, wonderful, thought-provoking ideas as we all take hands and wake up together.
Yes.
So I want to thank everybody for joining us. We didn't get a chance to go into breakout rooms today, but we're going to do that a little bit more on some of our Sundays. And I'm going to actually go to gallery view for a minute just so we can see each other. So most of you have your cameras off, but if you want to turn your cameras on, we can say hello. Thank you, Bridge, for the wonderful work you're doing and being with us this Sunday.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Katrina.
Very good to meet you. Look forward to more.
I resonate with your work.
Thank you.
And I think we have some perspectives in common.
Yes.
Definitely. Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you at some of our shows that are coming this weekend. God's blessing, everybody. Bye-bye.